Hey friends, Michael Warren here from Essential Guitar Lessons, and let's learn all about music theory for guitarists. This will be a series of lessons I'll upload regularly so you can follow along. Don't forget, if you like this lesson, to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Songs and lessons uploaded weekly. If you have any problems with the lesson, please leave a comment and I'll get back to you. So I'm putting this together because I found a lot of theory lessons were for piano. Now yes, music theory is the same for all instruments, but we'll relate this back to the guitar so you can see how it works. Now in theory we have lots of rules, so I'll show you what rules can be bent or broken and what can't as we go along. So you may ask, why bother learning theory? Now it does help on many levels. It can give you new ideas for songwriting and chord progressions. It'll help you improvise solos and write your own. It makes it easier to relate your ideas to other musicians. It helps to understand all the different chords and all your scales and how to use them. It even helps working out songs quicker. So there's lots of things we can do with theory, and there's much more than that. So let's get into it. So to start these, we're presuming you know very little about theory or anything at all. So in the first lesson we'll be covering moving around the guitar, naming the strings, tones and semitones or whole steps and half steps, sharps and flats, and the chromatic scale. Now the first part's not really theory, it's about moving around the guitar, but you must understand all these concepts to be able to move through to the harder theory, and the theory we'll do later in this lesson. So first we need to know what a note is. So a note's a sound we make with our instrument or any instrument. So that's a note, that's a note, that's a note, that's a note there. It's also a musical symbol, but we'll get to that down the track. So let's learn the names of the strings first. Now you must remember all these. Now this is a rule that can be broken because we can tune the guitar differently, but this is what we call standard E tuning. So we can name these two ways. We have numbers and notes. So let's start with the numbers because that's really easy. We have our bottom E string and we call that number 1. Then we just go to the next string, that's number 2. Next string, so 3 from the bottom, number 3. 4 from the bottom, number 4. Number 5, 5 from the bottom, and number 6, our top string. It's a little bit weird, you probably think the top one's 1, but we don't want to get that mixed up. Our bottom one's 1, then 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's nice and easy, that's just the numbers of the strings. Now we also have the names of the notes for each string. And each string has a note name, and we can use an acronym to remember this. So we're starting from our top string, and we can have elephants and donkeys grow big ears. So as we move down, so E, A, D, G, B, and E. Or we could also have Eddie, A, dynamite, goodbye, Eddie. So E, A, D, G, B, and E. So we use both notes and numbers when we're naming the strings. Guitarists will also say play the top string or play the bottom string. So that's pretty obvious. Play the top string, play the bottom string. Guitarists will also say play the 5th fret on the B string. So we're on the B string now, second from the bottom, we're playing the 5th fret. Now we're no longer playing a B note, but we refer to that as the B string. So it just tells us we're playing on the 2nd string there. So it's no longer a B, but it's just a guide to tell us what string to use. So that's naming the strings. It's not too hard, but we want to remember the notes given to each string and their numbers. Let's quickly go through that bottom string. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And elephants and donkeys grow big ears. E, A, D, G, B, and E. So not too hard, can be a little bit tricky to remember when you first start. So the next thing we'll have a look at is the term pitch, because we use this term when referring to notes and moving around the guitar. So pitch is a musical tone that is determined by the frequency of the wave it produces. So whether the sound wave moves slow or fast. So a lower note, the sound wave will move slower. A higher note, the sound wave will move faster. Now we don't really need to know about what the sound wave is doing. We just need to be able to put it onto the guitar. So what we're really doing is comparing two different notes. So if I have a note here, and if I move up the neck, that's now a higher pitch, so it's a higher note. So a lower note, a higher note, so it's a higher pitch. Let's do another one. If I was to take my bottom E string, that pitch is lower than the higher note there. So I've got a lower pitch up to a higher pitch. So we're just determining, or we're comparing two notes. I could have a note here, and then I could go down and make it a lower pitch. So I've made that a lower pitch now. And it doesn't matter where we are on the fretboard or what string we're on, we're comparing two notes. So if I was to have a high note up here, that's a higher pitch than my lower note there. So we're comparing two notes. We're going to start by moving up the neck, and we talk about this all the time. Now, most beginners think because the guitar neck's pointed up, that means move up the neck. It's actually the other way around, because we're talking about pitch. So moving up the neck is this way. I'm starting from a low pitch and moving up to a high pitch or a higher pitch. That could be on any string there. So on our B string and moving up the neck there. So I'm moving up the neck from a low pitch to a higher pitch there. So down the neck, pretty easy, is just the other way. If I say move down the neck, we're moving this way now from a high pitch to a low pitch there. So moving down the neck and moving up the neck. Now with scales as well, it's going to feel like it's all backwards. We say we're playing up a scale and we're going this way. Playing down a scale is this way, because again we're talking about pitch. So if I'm playing up the scale, I'm starting on a low note and playing up to a high note. So we're playing up the scale, or people will say ascending the scale. Down the scale is going to be this way, so I'm starting from a high pitch again and playing down to a low pitch there. So we're going up a scale, ascending, down a scale, descending. Now as we're moving around the neck as well, each fret has a note name. So every fret I play has a different name, and as I'm moving up the neck, the pitch is getting higher and the note name changes. So for every fret we have a different note name there. Now you may have heard the term open string as well. All that means is we're playing one of the strings, and it could be any of the 6 strings, and we're not pushing on the neck at all. We're not playing the fretboard. We're just playing the open string there. We're not pushing down on a fret. So if you hear the term open string, just play the string and we're not playing on the fretboard at all. So that's moving around the neck. It's not too hard once you get used to it. Up the neck, down the neck, up a scale or ascending a scale, down a scale, descending a scale. So let's also have a look at the guitar and why it's different to the piano, apart from the obvious. With a piano, each key, so the white ones and the black ones, are a different pitch, so higher or lower. So if I move from the left to the right, playing up, the pitch is getting higher. If I'm moving the other way, it's getting lower. So there's only one of each pitch. With guitar, we have pitches that repeat. So I have an A here, an A note, and I have an A note there on my open second string, 5th fret on the top string. They're both A, and they're both the same pitch. One's not higher or lower than the other. Now they do sound slightly different just because the way the guitar is set up. But we say they have the same pitch and it's the same note. And that happens all over the guitar. I can have an E here and an E there. They're exactly the same note with the same pitch. Again, I can have an E there or an E there. So that happens all over the guitar. So a piano doesn't have that. It has one of each pitch, where the guitar we have multiples of pitches. So now that we know what the pitch is and the differences, now let's have a look at tones and semitones, because we must know these concepts as well. So let's have a look at tones and semitones, or whole steps and half steps. So a tone is also called a whole step, and you can use either, and a semitone is also called a half step, and you can use either one of those. They're both correct. So a tone or a semitone is the distance between two different notes. Now this is a rule we cannot break. So a semitone is the smallest distance we have between two notes. Now there are things called microtones, but don't worry about that, we'll cover that down the track. So all we need to know is a semitone or a half step is the smallest distance we have between two notes. So let's have a look at that on the guitar now. So if I was to start on my 3rd fret on the top string, on our E string, and move forward to the 4th fret, so I've moved up 1 fret, that's a semitone or a half step. If I go back to the 3rd fret, top E string, and move down a fret, so back to the 2nd fret, that's a semitone as well. So it doesn't matter whether I move up or down. From the 3rd fret to the 4th fret, it's a semitone. From the 3rd fret to the 2nd fret, it's a semitone. And I can do that anywhere on the guitar. So let's take the 3rd string from the bottom, our G string. If I start on the 9th fret and move up to the 10th fret, that's a semitone. If I go back to the 9th fret and move back to the 8th fret, that's a semitone. And we'll do one more. Let's take the 5th fret on the bottom E string. If I move to the 6th fret, that's a semitone. Back to the 5th fret, and if I move to the 4th fret, that's a semitone. So that's really easy. 1 fret up or back, either direction on any string is a semitone. Now it gets a little confusing with the open string, so let's have a look at the E open string first. Because it's the open and it's the lowest note we've got on the guitar, unless we use our whammy bar, but don't worry about that. I can't go down a semitone because I'm not going to place my finger here up on the neck there or up on the headstock. So to move a semitone up the neck, I play the 1st fret. So that's 1 semitone, open string to the 1st fret. And that's the same with all the strings. So we're on the bottom E string, move up a semitone, I go to the 1st fret. 2nd string the same, 3rd, 4th and 5th. So from the open string, if I move to the 1st fret, that's a semitone. Now this is where guitar gets a little bit weird. We can also move back a semitone from our open string. Now I can't do it from my open E string because that's the lowest note I have on the guitar. So our 6th string, our open E, I can't go back, otherwise I'd be playing on the headstock, and we don't do that there. But we spoke about pitch and how we have the same note. So the open A string, so my 5th from the bottom, is also the same note as my 5th fret on the E string. They're both A and they're both the same pitch. So they're both A, both the same pitch. 5th fret on the top string and the open A string are the same note. So I can't go back on my A string because again I'm going back and I'll be back on the headstock. So I know that that's A. I know my 5th fret on the E string is A. So if I go back 1 fret, that's a semitone back from the open A string. So we have A and we can go back 1 there. And that works with all the strings. So let's go through them. If I had an open D string, so 4 up from the bottom, that's also the same as my 5th fret on the A string. So same note again there. So if I go back 1 fret on the A string, back to the 4th fret, I'm now a semitone down from my open D string. And you can hear that it's a lower pitch there. Now I can do the same on the G string. I can go back a semitone, I have to find the G note on the D string. So that's the 5th fret on the D string. So you can hear again, same note. And this is the way we tune the guitar also by ear. So 5th fret on the D string is the same as our open G string. So I just move back a fret on the D string to the 4th fret. And then I've moved back a semitone from that open G string. Now it's a little bit different here with the B string. I have the open B string. Now the same note on the G string is going to be the 4th fret on the G string. So it changes a little bit there. So I have the open B string, which is a B note. Same pitch B note is the 4th fret on the G string now. So to go back a semitone, I just go back 1 fret, and that makes the 3rd fret on the G string. 1 semitone back from the B open string. And our last one is the E open string, so bottom E string is the same as our 5th fret on the B string. So again, you can hear the same note. So to move back a semitone, I just go to the 4th fret on the B string, so 2nd from the bottom. And that's a semitone down from our open E string. So that's a little bit weird, just play around with that. And as we said, that's also how we tune the guitar, because we're playing the same notes there, A and A, then we're playing D and D, G and G, B and B, and E and E there. Now with semitones, we also say that's one step, or we've raised the note one step. So I've moved it up one fret or one step. Then we have our tones, and that's pretty easy again. Instead of one fret, we move up 2 frets or down 2 frets. So if I'm on the 3rd fret again, top E string, if I move up 2 frets to the 5th fret, I've moved the tone up the neck. Again, back to the 3rd fret on the E string, if I move back 2 frets to the 1st fret, I've moved the tone there. And again, I can do this on any string with any fret. So I'm on the 9th fret on our E string. If I move up to the 11th fret, I've moved the tone. Back to the 9th fret, if I move down 2 frets back to the 7, I've moved the tone. And let's do one more. If I'm on the G string, and let's go to the 7th fret, so 3rd from the bottom. If I move up to the 9th fret, that's a tone. If I go back to the 7th fret and move to the 5th fret, that's a tone. Now the open strings again are going to work a little bit differently. From the open string, if I want to move a tone, this time I'm going to go to the 2nd fret. So from our top E string, move a tone up, it's going to take me to the 2nd fret. So open, and that happens with all the strings. So open A, 2nd fret A is a tone. Open D, 2nd fret D is a tone. Open G, 2nd fret G is a tone. Open B, 2nd fret B is a tone. And open E, 2nd fret B is a tone. So we can also move back a tone from our open strings. It's going to be nearly the same as our semitones. Again, we can't do the top E string. If we wanted to move back a tone from our open A string, so 2nd from the top, I know that my A is also on the 5th fret on the E string. So if I want to move back a tone or a whole step, I just move back 2 frets and I'm on the 3rd fret on the E string, and that's a tone back from our open A string. And we can do that with all the strings as well. So I have D, my D string, 4 up from the bottom, same note on the A string on the 5th fret, move back 2 frets and I've moved back a tone. Same with my G string, open G is the same as 5th fret on the D, move back 2 frets on the D string, and I've gone back a tone from the open G. Again, a little bit different with the B string. That's the 4th fret on the G string now, so same note. So if I want to move back a tone, I move back to the 2nd fret on the G string. And the E string, open E, is the same as our 5th fret on the B string. And if I want to move back a tone from that open E, I go back to the 3rd fret on the B string. So I'll move down a tone there. Now with our tone, we also say 2 steps, or we can raise the pitch 2 steps, and that's our tone. So tones and semitones, or whole steps and half steps, pretty easy. Half step or a semitone, 1 fret up or back. A tone or a whole step, 2 frets up or 2 frets back on any string, on any fret. So now that we know what tones or whole step and semitones and half steps are, let's have a look at sharps, flats and naturals. So a sharp or a flat tells us which way to move on the neck of the guitar by a semitone. So a sharp is a hashtag symbol and a flat is like a lowercase b. Now we normally put that after the note when we're saying it, so I'd say A sharp, or I'd say F sharp, or I could say D flat or A flat there. So when we say it, we put the sharp or the flat after the note there. Now with our sharps, we just move up 1 fret on the neck. So I'm on the 3rd fret here, that's a G, and don't worry about the names of the notes at the moment, we'll get to that. If I move it up a semitone or a half step 1 fret, it becomes G sharp there. So we're moving up the neck by 1 fret. If I was on my D, so 5th fret on the A string and move up one, I've sharpened the note so it's now D sharp. Now there are some exceptions here, but we'll go over them when we look at the chromatic scale. All we need to remember is when we say sharp or sharpen a note, we're moving up the neck by 1 fret. So a flat's pretty easy as well, we just move down the neck 1 fret. So if I was on my G here again, 3rd fret on the top E string, if I move back 1 fret, or a semitone or a half step, it becomes G flat. If I'm up at my 7th fret on the A string, if I move back 1 fret, it becomes flat, so I'm playing an E and then making it an E flat. Now as I said, there are exceptions to this, but we'll go over that when we look at our chromatic scale. Now we also have an odd thing in music where we have the same note and it's got 2 different names. So let's have a quick look at that. So I said if we're on our 3rd fret, on our top E string, and if I move it forward 1 fret, that becomes G sharp. So I've played G and I've moved for the 4th fret, 1 fret up, it becomes G sharp. Now I also have an A on the 5th fret on the top string, and if I move back 1 like we said, we make it flat, so it becomes A flat on the 4th fret. So now we have the 4th fret, it's got 2 different names. It's got a G sharp, or it could be called an A flat. And we call that enharmonic, and again that happens all over the neck of the guitar. We have 1 note and it's got 2 different names, and when we look at our chromatic scale we'll go a little bit more into that. We just want to remember that that's called enharmonic there. So when you're starting out with those, you could say either. I could call the 4th fret a G sharp, or I could call it an A flat. It doesn't matter. It's not until something is in key that we worry about which one we use, and we'll go over that a bit later as well. All we need to know is there's notes in music that have 2 names for the same note, and that's called enharmonic there. Now when we write music, we put the sharp or the flat either at the start of the piece of music, which is called our key signature, and again we'll go over that a bit later, or we can put it in front of the note in our piece of music. And again we'll get to that in the next few lessons when we're looking at some basic music. Now we also have a natural, and when we write music, this takes the sharp or the flat off. So in my music I've got a C sharp, but this time I put a natural in front of the C, we just play it as a C. So you no longer play the note as a sharp or a flat, it's just now played the original note there, and that's our natural or our natural simple. Now musicians will also say sharpen a note or raise the note. So it doesn't matter what fret we're on. So I'm on the 4th fret, I can say I'll raise that note or sharpen that note. So all that means is just move forward 1 fret. When we say sharpen, we mean move up the neck 1 fret, or we say flatten, just flatten that note there. I could be already on a flat note, but they just mean move down 1 fret if we're flattening, up if we're going to sharpen there. So that's pretty easy. Sharps and flats, and our natural takes off the sharp and the flat when we're doing music, and we'll have a look at that a bit later. So now that we know what sharps and flats are, and what tone or whole step and a semitone or a half step are, we can move on to the chromatic scale. So the chromatic scale is the 12 notes we use in Western music, which are all the semitone parts, the smallest distance we can have between 2 notes, and we only have 12. Now they repeat, and we'll talk about that a bit later as well. Now in different cultures they can have more or less notes. We have 12 in Western music. So let's go through the names of those notes now. So we're going to have A sharp, B, C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp, G and G sharp. And then we're also going to put the flats in there as well. So above the A sharp we've got a B flat, then we have the B and the C, no sharp between them, and we'll have a look at that in a minute. We have the C sharp, and above that we put a D flat. We have the D sharp, above that we put an E flat. Then we have the F sharp, above that we put a G flat, and we have the G sharp, and above that we put the A flat. So that puts the flats and the sharps in. Now the flats or the sharps, one is not more important than the other. Normally if you're writing for an exam, you'll write up using sharps and come back using flats. And also with our non-sharp or flat notes, they're not more important than the sharp or flat notes. So now you can see we have these enharmonic notes. Same note, two different names there. So it's the same pitch, but it has a different name, or they have two names there. Now when you get to the end of the chromatic scale, we just go back around and we start again. So we just repeat. So you can almost, if you want to, think of it in a circle, and the notes just keep going around. We don't stop when we get to G sharp. We go back to the A and keep repeating there. If I'm going backwards, which I can do, once I get to the A, I can go back around to G sharp and keep going there. Now I can start on any note, and we call that the root note. So if I wanted to, I could start on C, and then I just go C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A sharp, B, and then B back to C there. So the note we start on is called the root note. Now the order always stays the same no matter what note we start on. Now the chromatic scales of rules can be broken with double sharps and double flats, but again, that's way down the track. Don't worry about that for the moment. Now you may have also noticed there's no B sharp or C flat, and there's no E sharp or F flat. Now I'm not going to go into why that is here, because that's more music history, and you can do hours on that subject alone. So we just need to remember there's no B sharp or C flat, no E sharp or no F flat. And again, that rule can be broken, but we'll have a look at that later on. So the actual names are fairly arbitrary. We could have called them anything, but we use them so we all understand what we're talking about. So I know what an A is when I'm talking to someone else. They know what an A is as well. So we have to remember no B sharp or C flat, no E sharp, no F flat. But this rule can be broken, and we'll get into that in a later lesson. So now you must remember all the names and the order they go into our chromatic scale. Now we can also play our chromatic scale on the guitar, but for the moment we don't need to know that. So let's have a look at moving around the chromatic scale. So if I was to start on my A and move to A sharp, so one step, I've moved a semitone or a half step there. And similar to the guitar, whether we go backwards or forwards, it doesn't matter. So if I was on my D and I moved back one step, so just one note there, I've moved back to D flat or C sharp, so I've moved a semitone there. Now it works the same between the B and the C and the E and the F. If I'm on B and I move one semitone, so I'm still only taking one step, that takes me to C, so B to C. Same with E to F as well. So either we move forward or backwards, it doesn't matter if we move by one step or one note, we've moved a semitone or a half step. Now the same with the tones, this time we move two steps, and we spoke about this, same with the guitar, 2 frets or 2 steps. So again, if I was to start on A and move to B, so I've gone A sharp, B, I've taken 2 steps, so that's a tone between A and B, or a whole step between A and B. If I was to go to my F and move 2 up, so F to F sharp to G, that's a tone there as well. So I've moved 2 steps again. Going backwards is exactly the same. So if I was to start on my, say, D, move back to C sharp and then back to C, or D flat, then back to C, I've moved 2 steps, so that's a tone there. Now moving from the B to the C is the same with our whole step or our tone. So I still have to take 2 steps. So B to C sharp, I've taken 2 steps, so that's a tone. From B to C sharp is a tone. Same from E, I move to F sharp, and that's a tone there. So whenever I'm taking 2 steps, backwards or forwards, it's a tone or a whole step. Whenever I'm taking 1 step, it's a semitone or a half step. The ends of the chromatic scales work the same as well. If I was to take a semitone from G sharp, remember we just go back round to the front, back to the A. So from G sharp to A is a semitone. If I was to take 2 steps from G sharp back to A, I'd go G sharp, A sharp, and I've taken 2 steps. So from G sharp to A sharp, there's a tone there. So that's moving around the scale there. Remember, you can think of it like a loop. It just keeps going around. A semitone or a half step is 1 fret or 1 step. A tone or a whole step is 2 frets or 2 steps along our chromatic scale. So let's relate that to the guitar now. So we can name every note on the neck using the chromatic scale. Now you may have wondered, we only have 12 notes, but I've got 6 strings and 22 or 24 frets, so how does that work? So the notes repeat themselves, those 12 notes you'll get over and over again. And as we spoke about, some of the notes have the same name with the same pitch, so our A and A, same note, same pitch. Now we also have notes that repeat at a higher pitch, and we call this an octave. So I could have an A here and I could have a hey here, so you can hear that one's higher than the other. We've got a low pitch A and a higher pitch A, and then I could go again, A and A, and that happens all over the guitar. So all the notes in the chromatic scale are repeated on the guitar with the same pitch and also with different pitches. So again, I could have a G, I could have a higher G, I could have a higher G again, and I could come up and have a higher G again. So they're all G, but they're at different pitches, and then we have the same pitches as well. So all the notes repeat at a higher or lower pitch, and some at the same pitches. So now let's check out the notes using the chromatic scale. So let's start on our E, our top string, and we go to our chromatic scale and we start on E. So then I just move a semitone up, and that's 1 step, so that's F. So I do the same on my fretboard. I move 1 fret, so E to F. So now that first fret on the top E string is F. If I move along the chromatic scale 1 step again, it becomes F sharp, move 1 step, my second fret's F sharp. If I move along again 1 step, so a half step there or a semitone, we're coming up to G, and we just keep moving up by semitones and going through the chromatic scale. So G, G sharp, A sharp, B, and then C, so no sharp or flat there, B, C, C sharp, D. And I can do that with every string. I've just got to make sure my starting note's right. So I can start on my D string, 4 up from the bottom. D is the open, go along my chromatic scale again. The next one will be D sharp, and that'll be my first fret. Then E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A sharp, B, C, C sharp, and then I get to D again. Once we get to the 12th fret, they all repeat again. The 12th fret is like all the open strings there. So now you can name every note on the neck using the chromatic scale. There are quicker ways of doing that, and you'll remember them as well as you go along, and we'll chat about that later. So that finishes our first theory lesson. Now there's lots to take in, so watch it a few times. We want to understand all these concepts before we move on. It's a good idea to also take some notes. So we want to remember everything we did in this lesson. We did the moving around the neck, the ups and downs, we did our tones and semitones, our sharps, our flats, the chromatic scale, and also naming the strings, which is important with notes and numbers. So thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this lesson. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell, and I'll see you soon.